So Sony soundbars have always been a great option for someone that wants a fully self-contained soundbar with a ton of bass. But Sony soundbars have always been rather big and their app was lackluster. But now we have the Sony HT-S2000, and I feel that this is the beginning of a new generation of soundbar from Sony that looks sleeker, and they also have a much better app. Regarding pricing, the Sony S2000 has a retail price of $500, but just knowing Sony, I do expect the soundbar to go on sale on a regular basis. But regardless, this is a good performing soundbar, and it also has an impressive amount of bass to it. So if you want to pick the soundbar up, it'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, pick up a Big Head approved hat, link down below. We've got trucker hats and snapbacks. By buying a hat, you help the unbiased and unsponsored videos coming, and it also helps us cover more products and produce more versus videos. Thank you to everyone who's already bought a hat, and look out for more designs coming soon. And also, please remember to hit that like button and let's get subscribed. Now first, I do have to point out that in this review, we're only going to be focusing on the soundbar itself. But if you wanted to, you can always add satellite surround sound speakers to the soundbar, and you can also add an external subwoofer. But in this video, we're only going to be looking at the soundbar itself. And also, I do have to point out that the S2000 does not have Sony's acoustic center sync. So if you have a Sony Bravia TV, your TV's built-in speakers will not work in conjunction with the S2000. But now let's talk about the design of this soundbar. Now, the S2000 is relatively compact with a length of 32 inches, a width of 5 inches, a height of 2.6 inches, and it weighs in at 8.3 pounds. Now, I feel the S2000 is still relatively chunky, but I do feel that it looks a lot sleeker and more elegant than Sony's older soundbars, like let's say the Sony A3000. Now, the S2000 is using matte black plastic on top, and it does a really good job of not causing any reflections, so the S2000 does a good job of disappearing when you're watching a movie, and it has an elegant looking metal screen on the front. Just be warned, it can be a little easy to dent because I literally just dented mine right now. There are also capacitive buttons up top, and there is a built-in screen as well. The only thing that I do have to point out is that by default, the screen is set to always on, which I feel can be very distracting, but you can go into the app and set it to turn off after a few seconds. Now, the S2000 also comes included with screws so that you can wall mount it. But personally, I do feel that wall mounting the S2000 is a little difficult because it is a little heavy, coming in at 8.3 pounds. But also, the S2000 does have an external power brick that you have to worry about. So if you want to wall mount this soundbar, then you're gonna have to hide the power brick behind your TV. And in general, I just wish that the S2000 didn't have an external power brick, because there are plenty of other soundbars out there of this same size or smaller and or lighter that don't have external power bricks. But next up, let's talk about ports. And ports here are pretty minimal. Now first off, there is an HDMI eARC port that goes connected to your TV, and the S2000 also comes included with a decent HDMI cable. There's also an optical port just in case your TV doesn't have an ARC port, and there's also a USB-A port so that you can plug in a USB stick and play music off of it. But other than that, ports on this soundbar are pretty minimal. There's no HDMI in port for your PlayStation, and there's no Ethernet port if you want to hardwire this soundbar into your network. Now, when it comes to wireless connectivity, the S2000 only has support for Bluetooth. Now, Bluetooth is definitely going to get the job done, but unfortunately, the S2000 does not have support for AirPlay or Chromecast, so you're not going to be able to stream music to this soundbar from your phone if you're connected onto the same Wi-Fi network. If you want to do that, then you're gonna have to do that through your TV. It's not a huge deal, but a lot of other soundbars now just have their own AirPlay and Chromecast support. Now, alongside the soundbar itself just being sleeker than Sony's previous soundbars, the S2000 also has a sleeker looking remote control now, because Sony's previous remotes were just super clunky. And from here, you can adjust the volume, adjust the bass, and toggle your sound feel and voice settings as well. But personally, I never use the remotes on my soundbars, and instead I just prefer to use their app. And the S2000 has a new app as well. This app also looks much sleeker than Sony's older app, it runs smoother, and from here you have more settings to adjust than what's found on the remote. But in general, I'm just super happy to see that Sony is finally improving their apps for their different speakers. But also, if you were to use the S2000 with a compatible Sony Bravia TV, you might not even have to open the app or use the remote that comes included with the soundbar, because a lot of your settings can be toggled directly from the TV. Now, for the best overall experience, you do want to use the S2000 with a Sony TV. But even if you're going to use the soundbar with a non-Sony TV, you don't have to worry about that you're missing out on any features. But with all of that out of the way, let's talk about sound. Now, when it comes to speaker setups, the S2000 has 3 front-mount firing drivers, and it also has 2 front-mount firing subwoofers with exhaust ports that shoot out the sides. But something that I did notice about this soundbar is that if you want to get the most out of it, as in you want the most bass and the loudest max volume, you want to set it to DTS Virtual X. Now, when this speaker is set to Dolby Atmos, it is going to sound more open, but with DTS Virtual X, it's just going to sound louder and have more bass. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. Now, this soundbar is playing at 75% volume, and we're going to be toggling between having DTS X turned on and off, and the bass is set to max. And we're also going to be using the built-in speakers found in the 2023 Sony Bravia X90L TV, and those are going to be playing at max volume.
Take me up to heaven. Yeah, she got me reaching still. Nothing to stop me falling. Who knew that looks could kill? I don't wonder why I'm breathing heavy like the weight of it's on my chest. On my chest. Cause it ain't no lie, I need it more than any metaphor could express. Yeah, you know she got me climbing still. Nothing to stop me falling. Oh, who knew that looks could kill? I don't wonder why I'm breathing heavy like the weight of it's on my chest. On my chest. Cause it ain't no lie, I need it more than any metaphor could express.
So, like you may have just heard, obviously any soundbar is going to sound better than your TV's built-in speakers. Your TV most likely just has a pair of downward firing speakers that bounce sound off of the table. If it isn't wall mounted like mine is, they don't get all that loud and their bass can get distorted if the bass really gets going. Now, the built-in speakers on the Sony X90Ls get decently loud, and distortion isn't a big problem for them at louder volumes, like with some more affordable TVs out there. But even with the Sony X90L, if you want to fully enjoy your movies, then you are going to want to invest in a soundbar. Now, as with Sony's past soundbars, the S2000 standout characteristic is that it has a lot of bass. Now, the bass on this soundbar isn't going to ferociously rattle any walls, but you're definitely going to be able to feel what's happening on the screen, and the bass on the soundbar actually resonates a lot deeper and a lot smoother than a lot of other soundbars out there of the same size, like let's say the JBL Bar 300 or the Bose Smart Soundbar 600. Now, it's great to know that the S2000 has a lot of bass to it all on its own, but in true Sony fashion, this soundbar does have a warmer sound signature to it. So I've noticed that if you want to hear what people are actually saying, you are going to have to use this soundbar at a higher volume. Now, you can always go in and turn on the voice mode on this soundbar, and it does help, but even still, it can still be a little hard to actually hear what people are saying, so you're still going to have to crank the volume up on this soundbar. Personally, I just wish that the soundbar had a manual EQ to it so that I can manually adjust the mids and treble to my liking. Because even with the voice mode turned on, you still gotta crank the volume up on the soundbar so that you can actually hear what people are saying. But with that aside, if you do want to use this soundbar at a higher volume, its warmer sound signature gives you a very balanced and immersive listening experience with bass that you can actually feel. But it also sounds surprisingly open. Now, there is no sense of verticality to the soundbar because there are no upward firing drivers, but the soundbar does a really good job of just sounding super open, and there were times where I really thought that I connected the satellite speakers to the soundbar because I swear to you, I thought I could hear things going off behind me, but it was just the soundbar itself. But when it comes to the max volume performance of this soundbar, the S2000 is going to be best suited for a small or medium-sized living room. The S2000 does an okay job of filling a larger living room with sound, but is still going to leave you wanting more. But in general, this soundbar does sound a little bigger than it actually is, specifically because it does have that physicality in its bass. So with all that being said, the Sony S2000 is a start of a new generation of soundbar from Sony. The S2000 is more elegant and sleeker looking than Sony's previous soundbars, and it is a little smaller, although I do hate that this soundbar now has an external power brick that you have to worry about. But from a software standpoint, the S2000 has a new and more elegant app to use. So even if you're not going to use the S2000 with a Sony TV, adjusting its settings is a lot more elegant and a lot easier. But from a sound standpoint, the S2000 has a warmer sound signature to it, and it has a lot of bass that you can hear and bass that you can feel. Now, if you want to use the soundbar at a higher volume, then at higher volumes, the soundbar is going to give you a very balanced and immersive listening experience. However, at lower volumes, sometimes it can be a little hard to actually hear the dialogue with the soundbar. Now, you can always go in and use the voice mode on the soundbar, and it does help. But sometimes I just wish that the S2000 would allow you to manually adjust the mids and treble, because sometimes you just gotta go in and crank the mids and treble depending on whatever mix of whatever you're watching. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.